SpaceX had no working rocket, no launch success, and no credibility. But somehow, she convinced NASA to hand them over $1 billion. But how did she do it? First, we need to go back to September 28, 2008. Gwynne Shotwell is sitting in a hotel bathroom in Scotland at 1 in the morning wearing pajamas with the shower running to muffle the noise. On her laptop screen, she's watching a rocket lift off from a tiny island in the Pacific Ocean. She's already watched this exact scene 3 times before, and all 3 times, the rocket exploded. This is SpaceX's 4th attempt to reach orbit, and if it fails, the company is dead. Elon Musk has no money left. NASA is watching. The entire aerospace industry is waiting for SpaceX to fail so they can say, "I told you so." When Shotwell saw the Falcon 1 rise through the sky and successfully reach orbit for the first time, she was unable to contain her joy. She started screaming and running in her pajamas down the hotel hallway where her SpaceX colleagues had already begun celebrating the first successful launch of their rocket. But here's what most people don't know. If Shotwell hadn't joined SpaceX 6 years earlier, there wouldn't have been a 4th launch. There wouldn't have been any customers. There wouldn't have been any NASA contracts. And SpaceX would have died quietly alongside the dozens of other failed rocket startups that litter aerospace history. This is the story of Gwynne Shotwell, the woman who turned Elon Musk's impossible dreams into a business that actually works. She's the president and COO who runs SpaceX's daily operations, while Musk chases his next big idea. She's the saleswoman who convinced NASA to bet over $1 billion on a company that had never successfully launched a rocket. And she's the bridge between Musk's chaotic genius and the thousands of employees trying to keep up with him. While Musk gets the headlines, Shotwell is the reason SpaceX didn't become just another failed space startup. Gwynne Rowley was born on November 23, 1963 in Evanston, Illinois. In 1969, when she was 5 years old, she watched a television broadcast of the Apollo 11 mission with her family, but remembers finding it boring and was not interested in space. Unlike the rocket-obsessed kids who would later fill SpaceX, young Gwynne had zero interest in space exploration. What she did love was fixing things. She helped her father with projects, and she repaired her own bike. Engineering as a career never crossed her mind until her mother planned a secret weekend activity, attending a Society of Women Engineers conference. Shotwell later recalled that moment. "I loved her suit," she said about the mechanical engineer on the panel. It wasn't the engineering that initially captured her attention. It was seeing a woman who looked professional, confident, and cool while talking about solving technical problems. Shotwell received, with honors, her bachelor's and master's degrees from Northwestern University in mechanical engineering and applied mathematics. After working at Chrysler, she joined the Aerospace Corporation in El Segundo, California, where she worked on thermal analysis and spacecraft design. After a decade there, she moved to Microcosm Inc. in 1998, where she grew the space systems business by a factor of 10 in just 3 years. By 2002, Shotwell had a stable job. Life was finally settling down. The last thing she needed was to join a risky startup, but then she went to lunch with a friend. Shotwell celebrated a friend taking a job at a new startup called SpaceX and went to lunch with him. Afterward, she took a quick tour of the tiny company's building. She had no resume, wasn't looking for a job, and had never heard of Elon Musk, but she was curious. During the tour, she met Musk. The impromptu meeting might have lasted 10 minutes, but during that time, Shotwell came away impressed by Musk's knowledge of the aerospace business. He wanted to bring down launch costs by building his own rocket engines and keeping key components in-house. He was compelling, scary, but compelling, Shotwell said. Musk called her later that day in 2002 and recruited her to be Vice President of Business Development as employee number 11. And immediately, she had a massive problem. How do you sell rockets from a company that had never successfully launched a rocket. The challenge Shotwell faced was brutal. SpaceX was developing the Falcon 1, but it was just designs and prototypes, no launch history, no proven track record. No customer would normally bet millions of dollars on a rocket from an internet entrepreneur. But Shotwell had credibility in the aerospace industry. She'd spent over a decade working on spacecraft design. She wasn't just a salesperson, she was an engineer who could explain exactly why SpaceX's disruptive approach would work. Selling rockets that kept exploding was a nightmare. March 2006, first launch, massive explosion. March 2007, second launch, failed during the second stage. August 2008, third launch, destroyed during stage separation. But Shotwell kept selling. She traveled the world pitching SpaceX's vision and managed to sell about a dozen flights to government and commercial customers. Crucially, her deal-making skills secured the big-ticket contracts with NASA that kept SpaceX alive, including the initial $278 million under the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services, or COTS. That 2006 COTS contract was critical. It gave SpaceX enough runway to keep testing, failing, and learning. But by late 2008, time was running out. SpaceX had one more launch attempt left, and Elon had split his last $30 million between SpaceX and Tesla. If the fourth launch failed, both companies would go bankrupt. Everything came down to September 28, 2008. On launch day, Gwyn was at a conference in Scotland. Since it was night and her husband was asleep, she stepped into the bathroom and turned on the water to watch the live stream without disturbing him. The Falcon 1 lifted off from Omelek Island. After 9 minutes and 25 seconds, SpaceX reached orbit for the first time. Shotwell couldn't contain herself. The successful launch proved SpaceX could reach orbit, but the company was still broke. Everything depended on winning the big NASA contract. In December 2008, Shotwell led the negotiations alongside Musk. The successful launch put them in a position to win the first Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS, contract. The total value of the deal was $1.6 billion for a minimum of 12 missions to resupply the International Space Station. NASA's financial lifeline had saved the company. Without Shotwell's sales work over the previous 6 years, building relationships and proving credibility before the rocket even worked, NASA would never have taken the bet. As SpaceX grew, Shotwell's role evolved from sales to running the entire operation: manufacturing, launch operations, finance, and legal. Everything that kept SpaceX functioning fell on her shoulders. This freed Elon to do what he does best: push impossible ideas. Over the years, Gwyn gained the reputation as the woman who turns Musk's visions into reality. She's the bridge between Elon and the rest of the company. When he started the Boring Company, founded Neuralink, and bought Twitter, Shotwell became the steady hand keeping SpaceX on track. A few years ago, when Elon tried to cancel the development of Falcon Heavy, Gwyn had to sprint to the conference room and remind him that the US military had already committed to the project. Canceling it would destroy their relationship with the Department of Defense. Elon backed down. Falcon Heavy, eventually launched in February 2018, became the world's most powerful operational rocket and generated billions in revenue. Under Shotwell's leadership, SpaceX grew explosively. She oversaw the growth of the Falcon rocket family, taking the launch cadence from 0 launches a year to over 100 in 2024. She helped secure landmark deals like the Commercial Crew contract to send astronauts to the ISS, and built the relationships with the Department of Defense that led to billions in military contracts. By 2024, SpaceX launches more rockets than the rest of the world combined. The Falcon 9 has become the most reliable rocket in history, and SpaceX has reduced launch costs by more than 90%. As of 2023, Shotwell is listed as the 28th most powerful woman in the world by Forbes. When Musk's attention shifted to Twitter in 2022, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson was reassured after meeting with Shotwell that she was firmly in charge of day-to-day operations.
The message was clear. As long as Shotwell was running SpaceX, the company would be fine. Today, SpaceX is valued at over $350 billion, and Gwynne Shotwell's estimated net worth of $1.2 billion is primarily attributed to her stake in the company. She still works insane hours, still travels constantly, and still shows up at launch sites. When people talk about SpaceX's success, they focus on Musk's vision. But vision without execution is just fantasy, and that's where Shotwell comes in. She sold launches when SpaceX had nothing to sell. She negotiated contracts that saved the company from bankruptcy. She built the business operations that scaled SpaceX from 12 employees to over 13,000. She turned Musk's impossible timelines into actual deadlines. She created the bridge between Musk's chaotic genius and the engineers building the rockets. Shotwell provided the business, the operational excellence, and the ability to make the impossible possible. Musk dreamed of affordable spaceflight. Shotwell sold it, negotiated it, and operationalized it. And that's the real story behind Gwynne Shotwell and SpaceX.